Hello, everybody. Today, I'd like to talk about the consciousness ID and how that may or may not be developed in the future. And I also want to talk about some new military technology that Elon Musk seems to be working on regarding a free energy system, which looks like it's being developed in space initially, but may be used longer term to create free electricity to we the people. So when I was looking at the structure of Space Operations Command, and obviously the arms are called Delta in the cybersecurity side, and those seem to be the arms that are going to be overseeing the consciousness ID and the GESARA and banking platforms, which I talked about in my last video when I talked about Elon Musk and X.com being the platform which is likely to be the first platform to be running the GESARA framework and overseen by the Delta arm of Space Operations Command for its cybersecurity. So when I was thinking about Delta and how that is overseeing the X.com banking and then further on the consciousness ID, I was thinking Delta is also a brainwave, a delta brainwave, and I wanted to know if that delta brainwave was anything to do with why Space Operations Command had called their cybersecurity arms Delta. And I wanted to know if the delta brainwave was part of the consciousness ID that they're trying to create, whether it was going to be one of the components of how they measure our consciousness in order to make the Q consciousness ID, which, as I've spoken about in previous videos, will be like a one-time passcode in the respect that the new technologies will be able to read our consciousness, and we will be able to access all of our apps and our banking and our technologies through this consciousness ID. So that was what started me thinking about Delta and Delta brainwaves. And so then I wanted to do some channeling around that to see if any of that corresponded, if the Space Operations Command and its Delta arm, which runs cybersecurity, whether that had anything to do with the Delta wave in our brain, and whether that was how they were going to create this or part of this consciousness ID. So the first question I asked was, in Space Operations Command, are the Delta wings, are they named Delta, i.e. the cybersecurity wing? Is it named Delta because the Q consciousness ID will be based on Delta brainwaves? And they said to me that Space Operations Command did not name its Delta wings for that reason, but Q Consciousness ID will primarily be based on the Delta brain waves or consciousness. So I said, what is the Delta brainwave? And they said to me that the Delta is a sleep wave, or Delta is a sleep wave, and that sleep waves follow a smoother pattern or resonance, which is more predictable. So during sleep, we have 4 waves. We have alpha, theta, delta, and beta. And when I looked up the definition of the four brainwaves, they said to me that these four types of brainwaves can be measured in the brain by an EEG. And they said again that the four waves are delta, theta, alpha, and beta. And they said that the delta waves are more frequent during sleep. So then I asked, in order to detect these delta brainwaves that we have during our sleep, will the consciousness, the new Q consciousness ID, will it require that we have any sort of bodily implant? And they said no. They said the new Q consciousness ID will read frequency from the body's toroidal field and the delta waves, the sleep waves. So I'm going to talk about toroidal fields on the body in a moment. But the next question I asked them before that was, how will the Q consciousness ID, how will it be able to read the delta waves, say when you're awake? And they said that the delta waves are always running, but only appear to be accessed during sleep or meditation, as that is when the other waves of alpha and theta become quieter. But they did say that technology can read your delta wave whether you are asleep or awake. So they seem to be saying that the delta waves are always running in the background, and they appear to be it, and it appears that you can only access delta during a sleep or meditation process. But that's only because in those moments of sleep or meditation, your alpha, theta, and I think your beta become quieter. But they were saying that the new technologies will be able to read the delta wave whether you're asleep or awake. So regardless of how quiet the alpha and theta become, it looks like they're going to be able to read the delta wave anyway. So then I asked, what technology is going to be used to measure these sleep waves? Because this sounds very interesting. And they actually said that the crystals within the pineal gland emit a frequency which can be measured by technology and technological probes or nodes. So then I said, do these nodes or probes need to be inserted or placed in or on or around the body in order to do that? And they said, yes, you can use all the methods above. So they didn't tell me exactly what technology they're going to use as such, but what they described to me was that the crystals within the pineal gland, they emit some kind of frequency, and that with some sort of technology which maybe has a probe or a node on it, they can measure this frequency from the pineal gland. So how they're going to make that a non-contact reading in the future, i.e. where you don't need any nodes or probes on you, I don't know. They didn't say, but it sounds like they're working on technologies that will help to read the consciousness by picking up, in part at least, the frequency that's emitted from the crystals in your pineal gland. So going back to the toroidal field, they were saying that the ways that they're going to measure the consciousness was through measuring the frequency of the delta wave, and they were going to combine this with reading the toroidal field. So this is a toroidal field. It looks like a donut. It kind of goes in and down and then back out, in and down and back out on both sides. As you can see in the center, it's like a donut shape. Sort of rolls up and down like this with a donut shape. So I asked them, can you explain to me the concept of toroidal energy, please? And they said that toroidal energy, or toroids, are naturally occurring patterns of light and sound in the quantum field. So as you can see, the toroidal energy is created by sound and light in the quantum field, and it makes this pattern. So then I said to them, in what way could this energy, this toroidal energy, in what way can it be utilized either now or in the future? And they said to me that this toroidal energy, which comes from the human heart or is generated by the human heart, it will be adapted to work in conjunction with the Q consciousness ID, and it will be one of the main parameters of the Q consciousness ID. So when I looked up what is the toroidal field of the human body, and what the definition is that the center of our torus field is the heart, and that the heart generates the largest electromagnetic field around the body, and therefore the heart is the focal point for all that is. The heart center has its own torus energy field flowing around it, in addition to a larger torus field which flows around the whole body. So what they're also saying is that the heart generates this large electromagnetic field around the body. And so the heart is the focal point from where this toroidal energy emanates. So in my spiritual teachings, I have always taught that when you open your heart to love, this energy goes out wide. And when you're in an energy of fear, it contracts. So the heart, the physical heart, depending on what emotion it's holding or experiencing, can affect the size or the frequency of this electromagnetic field or this toroid. So then I wanted to know what the other parameters might be that they would use for the Q consciousness ID. It sounds like they're going to have lots of different components which they're going to combine. And they said there will be many components which will combine to create the Q ID, consciousness ID system or passcode system of the future. And some of it will be technological, and some of it will be biological or metaphysical. So then I asked them, so can you explain to me what these components might be in a bit more detail? So they said the technical aspects will be the devices which can read human consciousness. And in reading the consciousness, if they accept that it's actually you, then obviously you'll be able to access the system. And they were saying that the technology will be able to understand that it's you. So I asked them again, so the technology of the future will know if someone is truly who they say they are by the consciousness that they're carrying. And they said yes. So that was the technological aspects of it, that you would have devices that could read your consciousness. But they'd also mentioned about these biological and metaphysical components, and I wanted to know what those would be. And they said to me that the biological components of the Q consciousness ID will be your DNA, and that the metaphysical components will be your vibration, your frequency, and the consciousness measurements when you're relaxed or meditating, for example, the delta waves. So then I asked, will this be a hack-proof system? And they said to me that at the current time, no, but in the future, yes, it will be a hack-proof system because it will be able to grow and change and adapt with the individual's consciousness, which is obviously unique to each person in each moment. And I said, so how will the technological systems, how will they be able to adapt to a person's changes in consciousness? For example, if a person was to receive, say, a spiritual upgrade, an upgrade in light, which then affect light is wisdom, and that would then affect, say, your spiritual frequency, could also affect your DNA, your spiritual DNA. And it could, if you're holding more love in your heart, again, that could affect the toroidal field. Because as I explained before, the heart creates an electromagnetic field based on the emotion it's feeling. If it's feeling fear, the toroidal field will contract. If it's feeling love, the toroidal field will expand, i.e., you're making more electromagnetic field if you're happy. And they said that essentially a person's consciousness is dictated by their DNA and by their soul contract. This was very interesting because I know this is a spiritual teacher, but I was wondering how they're going to link that to a technology. They said that the soul initiates certain events in a person's journey, which allows for the heart to open. And as the heart opens, which is the toroidal field, it pulls in light, and light is wisdom or consciousness. And as the consciousness is pulled into the energetic vessel of the person, i.e., the heart, then this can also activate the DNA, the spiritual DNA. And that the DNA is like the memory bank or the storage center of your personal computer. So in human analogy, the computer would be your mind, your body, and your soul, or your conscious, subconscious, and superconscious levels of understanding. So then I said, so how, again, it's very confusing. I don't know how technology is going to be able to understand that. I can read people's energy and frequency and the amount of light they're carrying, and to, where their path might be heading. And I can read deep-seated things that they're holding on to in their chakras that might need healing, past life things, shadow side, lots of different layers I can understand as because of the work that I do. So, but I don't understand at the moment how the technology will be able to understand that. So I said, so how will technology be able to read this constantly evolving and changing landscape that us humans have from moment to moment? Obviously, our emotions change in each moment, our environment changes, our level of spiritual understanding changes, a lot of moving parts. So they said to me that technology, as we currently understand it, will struggle with being able to adapt to the many complex interactions which alter and grow consciousness. But they did say that in the future, technology will be more self-learning, and as such, it will have a consciousness of its own, and that the consciousness of the technology will learn to understand the consciousness of the human. So I said, will AI be necessary to develop this consciousness in technology going forward? And they said in some cases, yes. And I said, what is the definition of technology in this analogy? And they said that technology in this analogy will be the hardware of machines, but also the technology of how the human components of our body interact with external forces. So I said, so how can a human body be described as a technology? And they said to me that the human body is a biological system, a system of structures, processes, and physics, which, when working to create an outcome, can be described as a technological process. So I said to them, so the processes of the brain, the heart, the DNA, these are all classed as technology. And they said, in this analogy, yes, because we are talking about how they will combine with the external hardware to create a Q consciousness ID. So then I asked them, is human consciousness classed as external hardware? Because where is consciousness? Is it in the brain? Is it outside of our body? And they said, so is human consciousness classed as external hardware? And they said, no. They said, even though consciousness is technically outside of the body, it is still connected to the energetic vessel or vehicle of the human's energetic being, and it's connected to the human soul. So then I said, what is the soul? So I know as a spiritual teacher what the soul is, but in terms of how they want to describe it when they're building the Q consciousness ID, I was interested to hear how they would describe the soul. So I said to them, what is the soul? And they said, the soul is the feeling, knowing, and all sensing part of a human being, a human's consciousness. So I said to them, so is the soul a person's intuition? And they said, no. They said the intuition is more based in the energetic layer of the chakra column or the chakra system, whereas the all-knowing is connected to the consciousness. So they're saying that consciousness is outside of us, coming in from the creator or whatever you understand to be above and around us, the quantum field, and that the intuition is something that is coming from the chakra system or the internal energy system. So I thought this was very interesting that they described it like that. So then I said, so how does the chakra system connect us to the human consciousness? And they said, this again is dictated by your level of light or wisdom in your spiritual heart, and any subsequent activation of hidden knowledge, quantum knowledge within your unique DNA helix. So I said, how does the toroidal energy field of the heart fit into all of this Q consciousness ID concept? And they said to me that the toroidal field expands away from the body depending on the amount of love which is being felt in the human vessel or the energetic being. So I said to them, so the toroidal field of the human heart is not just like the generator of the field, but it also dictates the expansion of the field. And they said, yes, no. They said the toroidal field of the human heart is dictated by many factors, which all equate to a total sum of love. This was very interesting because I know this, but I was interested to hear how they were teaching us. So I said, can you explain? And they said that love is the balance or total of many factors. They said, for example, actual physical or emotional or spiritual love can be felt on many levels, conscious, subconscious, and superconscious. And they said also you have the activation or healing of the chakra system based on how well you've dealt with your shadow side, your inner child, your inner healing, based on the progress you've made with that affects the amount of love that you hold. And they said the third thing was obviously the environment that you surround yourself with or find yourself in. So they were saying that love is the total of all of those factors: the environment you're in, how much shadow or healing work you've done, and the actual physical, spiritual, and emotional levels within your consciousness. Consciousness is of 3 levels. It's the consciousness that you hold in here, right here and now, the subconscious levels, and the superconscious levels, which is the spiritual aspects. So the final thing I asked them around the consciousness ID was about nanotech. Obviously, we're finding that a lot of us have all got nano within us. Whether we've had vaccines or not is irrelevant, because the nanotech is in the air, the water, and our food. So everyone, to a certain extent, will have nanotechnology in their system. So I wanted to know, will nanotech be activated in humans? And I was wondering, are they going to use the nanotech to create, are they going to activate nanotech within us in order to create this consciousness ID? And they said, not exactly. They said any healing frequencies used in the future, whether that's through healing towers or quantum healing gardens in the quantum cities, it will be able to connect to your overall vibration frequency or consciousness. And they said that the consciousness waves will be, or are, a combination of many factors, as we've already been explaining, which could include the influence of nanotech being in your system. So what they're saying is that the nanotech won't be activated, but if you have nano within you, that will create part of your frequency, part of your consciousness, part of your, just by what's in your body, the elements of the nanotech being in your body will create part of your personal consciousness ID, but it won't necessarily be activated. So I suppose the way you could look at it would be like if you had something added to your body through, say, an operation. Let's say you had a new hip, for example. The new hip would become part of your consciousness, but it wouldn't necessarily be an activated part of anything technological. So it would seem that the Q consciousness ID is some way away yet, because there seems to be an awful lot of components, biological and technological, that need to be working together in order to measure our consciousness in a way that the technology can understand. And it seems that to a certain extent, AI will be a prerequisite in being able to do that. So as I get more information in the future, if I get more information in the future, I will obviously keep updating you. But often information that I get is, sometimes 2 or 3 years in advance. So, we'll just see how that unfolds. But it will be interesting to see how in the future we may not need lots of different passwords and passcodes, which none of us can ever remember. And people can hack into our systems and get into our bank accounts and private information. And so, as I said some time ago, when I talked about Jack Dorsey trying to create this one-time passcode, I think this might be what they were referring to. They're trying to create a way that we all have just one ID, and that is us, the total sum of who we are, whether that be spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical. When you add all that together, combine it all together, it creates our consciousness. And when they add that in to other biometrics like DNA, fingerprints, retina scan, then I think that maybe, and the delta waves, then maybe when you add all those components together, you could possibly create this Q consciousness ID. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds. So the second part of this video, I wanted to talk about Musk, and I wanted to know if he's developing any sort of new technologies in regards to free energy, the free energy system. So I said, is Musk or his team working on a clean, free energy grid system? And they said to me that a new system of free, sustainable energy is being trialed currently to power the satellites and the 5 and 6G towers, which are going to be used, which are being used for communications. And I said, but what about the grid, the electricity grid? And they said, I said, is some new technology coming which will provide free, sustainable energy solutions worldwide? And they said, yes. They said, there are many solutions that are being discussed by the White Hats, and they are planning to integrate these new energy stroke grid ideas in time for 2032, starting on or around 2026 to 2027. Sounds like they hope to have it, completed by 2032, and it looks like they're hoping to begin these projects as early as 2026. This was very interesting. So then I wanted to look around whether Elon Musk was involved in any sort of energy system where they might be using the concepts of toroidal energy. And now I understand that Nikola Tesla first designed this concept, and I wanted to look and ask all around that subject to see if it was possible that Elon Musk was actually working on that project with the military. So going back to the previous part of this video, the toroidal field is like a donut shape, which is sort of swirling up and around like this with a donut center. And I wanted to know if that toroidal field could be applied to a free energy system and whether Musk was working on that. So then my questions went in that direction. So I said, is Starshield, which is now the brand name for Starlink since it's moved to the military, is Starshield the brand involved in toroidal energy or SpaceX? And they said that SpaceX is the brand involved in toroidal energy. So they confirmed that toroidal energy is being developed by SpaceX. So I said, how far along are the tests of the SpaceX free green energy source using toroidal energy? And they said it was completed. And I said, are there any other energy sources being looked at? And they said, yes. They said solar and lunar from space. So they're looking at using lunar power and solar power, but whilst in space. So this was very interesting. So now I created questions all around this concept. So I said, does the universe or the multiverse or the planets, do they all run on this concept of toroidal energy? And they said that no, that toroidal energy is just like one component. So they were answering me precisely that, because I had said, does the universe run on toroidal energy? And they were explaining, no, it doesn't just run on toroidal energy. Toroidal energy is just one component of what the planets run on, or what energy the planets run on. So I said, what is the purpose of this component, this toroidal component? And they said that the toroidal field creates an electrical circuit. One side is electrically positive and one side is electrically negative. So one has a positive, one has a negative, and this creates a magnetic pull, which is what creates the flow of the energy, the toroidal energy. And I said, can this toroid be artificially created to develop an electrical energy? And they said, yes, it can. It is a field used in scalar technology, for example, and it's often described or seen as a figure of 8. And they drew me this diagram where they showed me it was called the toroidal push and pull. And it looks like a figure 8, the way that they've drawn it for me. And they're showing how one arrow is pushing and one arrow is pulling. So I said, could this concept be used to generate electricity or power in a grid system or other system to power, say, homes or businesses across countries or towns, for example? And they said that a toroid circuit could indeed be used to create a current, an electrical or energetic output, which could be redirected to power homes, businesses. And they said they would do it by using nature and the push and the pull in the atmosphere. So the push-pull effect that we just saw on my diagram, they're saying you could harness that from the atmosphere and bring it in to power the grid, basically. So I said, what is this like push-pull in the atmosphere? They said the naturally occurring magnetic pull of the atmosphere creates a toroid circuit under the right conditions. They said it's like in the same way that under the right conditions, thunder and lightning can occur. So then I said, is anyone or has anyone developed this concept or any other concept which is similar to this, which will create a free, sustainable energy for the masses going forward? And they said, yes. They said Elon Musk and SpaceX are working with specialist military and engineering teams to develop a system of platforms or antenna that can bounce energy from one tower to the next using natural resource from the atmosphere. So if you look at this basic diagram, you'll see these are the antennas. Please excuse my basic art. And the arrows coming down would represent collecting the toroidal energy, the push-pull energy, bringing it down to the antenna. They're trying to make the toroidal energy come into the antenna and then it bounce off to the next antenna and bounce off to the next antenna after that. So instead of needing power lines between the antenna or the satellites, you would just bounce the power from one to the next. So this is their terms. Obviously, again, you know, I'm not an engineer or quantum physicist or anything like that. It's pretty obvious. But I wanted to understand, when you say bounce, what do you mean? And they said that the energy will be drawn into the antenna, and then with natural magnetic propulsion of the negative and the positive energy, it will create a flow which will begin to spin. And they said that the spinning momentum will create power, which once it reaches a certain point, will then naturally bounce to the next antenna or satellite. So if you look at this diagram, again, please excuse my basic artwork, but you can see the antennas. We have 3. The first one has a positive. This was just the way they showed me in very basic terms. If you think if the first antenna is a positive and the next one is a negative, that's the first thing that I noticed that they showed me. But then within the toroidal spin of each antenna, so at the top of the first antenna, where it's a positive charge, as you can see, it swirls round. It starts in the center with a positive charge, and then it swirls round in a circle, round, until it gets to the negative charge. And at that point, there explains to me that's what makes it bounce to the next antenna, where it reaches then a negative charge, and that spins it round into the center, where it reaches then a positive, and then that makes it bounce, and so on and so forth. And so you could have a whole grid of antennas or satellites, and then within itself you're creating a huge toroidal spin or a toroidal bounce. So that's the only way I can really explain it. That's how they drew it for me. So I found that very interesting, although I don't know how possible that would be. If anybody knows that information, please let me know. So then I said, so is this bounce system, is it the same system as Nikola Tesla designed? And they said, no, this use of toroidal energy is different. They said with Nikola Tesla, he kept the circuit within 1 unit. So he brought in the energy and he kept it flowing within 1 unit. And what they're saying is that SpaceX are trying to create this bounce system where the energy can be thrown by some sort of electrical propulsion to the next antenna or satellite. So Nikola Tesla was able to create that energy and keep it in one place, and SpaceX are trying to develop a way to bounce it to the next satellite or antenna or station or wherever it needs to go. So then I said, so in effect, this bounce system could power whole groups of antennas or satellites within space, or maybe even on the ground. And they said yes. So then I said, so the toroid or circular energy can be made even out in space. And they said that the space bounce system will create its electrical charge or propulsion from either solar or moon energy, lunar energy, whereas the system on the ground will pull its energetic propulsion from the atmosphere. That was very interesting. So I said, so in the future, could, say, electric cars or vehicles, could they be powered by this toroidal bounce technology? And they said, no, the cars or the vehicles themselves wouldn't be powered by this bounce system, but the batteries within the electric vehicles, they could be charged through using this antenna, the antennas or the power grid, which would be supplied by this toroidal energy. So whereas you're plugging in your electric vehicle now to the electrical grid, you would do exactly the same, but it will be powered by this toroidal energy. They also said the other option would be that cars could run like monorail, or they could run like a tram system along one line of electric power in the future. And so they showed me, and if you look at the diagram again, they showed me the antennas, which would be, again, working on a bounce system, throwing energy from one to the next. And if that was connected to an electric power rail or power line below the vehicles, the train, the cars, whatever transport you need to operate, then essentially those cars could all run along that power line, or the train or whatever transport could run along that power line, and it could be powered by the toroidal bounce energy, all coming in naturally from the atmosphere. So then I said, will the torus or toroidal constructs or fragments of them, will they be the main player as the basis for future technologies such as computing or anti-gravity propulsion? And they said toroidal energy fields will be the basis of consciousness ID constructs in the future for computer technology, which will allow for personal ID verification. And they also said that toroidal energy fields will also be used in tech where human interaction is needing to be utilized. So I think in this instance, because the toroidal energy creates the electrical charge, what they're saying is that there might be a way in the future that technology runs from this toroidal electric. I said, why will toroidal energy be used in tech going forward? And will it be the only form of energy used in computing or propulsion going forward? And they said that toroidal energy is a natural field within the constructs of the quantum field and requires very little energy to harness the wave or the frequency, making it a very good choice for sustainability. So then I said, can toroidal energy be used to utilize propulsion technologies or transport? And they said yes. They said toroidal energy can be used as a free, sustainable energy force that can be harnessed to power the movement or velocity of a propulsion mechanism. So I said, could toroidal energy be used in maglev trains? Maglev standing for magnetic levitation. And they said yes and no. They said that maglev trains are connected to the Earth and driven forward by magnetic propulsion. This magnetism could interfere with the toroidal energy, which is also created by negative and positive elements or ions in the atmosphere. So I said, so could toroidal energy be used in other forms of anti-gravity propulsion? So I think what they're describing to me here is that toroidal energy is based on some kind of magnetic propulsion between a plus and a minus. You harness it and to create the toroidal field and the movement. And it's based on sort of like a magnetic pull, or that's how they've explained it. And if the magnetic levitation trains are also running on magnetism, I suppose the two things could maybe counteract each other. So I think that's what they're explaining there. But if you know anything about that, then please let me know. So then I asked, could toroidal energy be used in other forms of anti-gravity propulsion? And they said yes and no. They said, again, it would depend on the interaction of the plus and the minus of each component being assembled. They said, essentially, anti-gravity is a different technology of force, whereas toroidal energy is more an energy of flow or frequency. And they said the anti-gravity is more ground-based and toroidal energy is more air-based. I really like how they break it down for me because obviously I wouldn't understand it. So then I said, could toroidal energy fields be adapted to create some healing technology? And they said that toroidal energy is a frequency or a flow, and that if it's harnessed correctly, it could power any equipment that's being used for healing or any equipment which requires a power source or an electrical supply. They said toroid energy is more of a power source, like it creates electric, whereas a healing frequency would run on a different sonic or sound. So then I said, is Earth powered by toroidal energy? And they said yes. And I said, so if powered by toroidal energy, is the Earth flat, round, or something else? And they said, the Earth is round, it's a globe, but like the heart, it contains energetic centers which create the positive and negative force which pulls the toroidal energy through it. So if you look in the diagram, you can see there's the globe of Earth, and there's showing that there's the positive at the top, negative at the bottom, and then that's showing the flow of how the vortex is created, coming down through the center and then going up and out to create that kind of donut effect. So I said, so what else can you tell me about toroidal energy? You know, are the military, along with Musk, are they creating more than one option for this toroidal energy? And they said many space concepts are being tested and developed to harness the plus and the minus aspects which can create toroidal energy. And I said, what will the space toroidal projects be used for? And they said they will be used, for example, for clean, free energy, which will be harnessed and developed to create free, clean energy worldwide. And it will be used to, it will be able to power electricity worldwide. It will be a form of worldwide electricity. It will also be able to power electric transport and propulsion transport, and it will also be able to power satellites. They explained to me that toroidal energy is it's like an electrical power source, and so in and of itself, it doesn't create any sort of computer processing source. It's more that it powers the computers, or it powers or recharges batteries, or the car, or whatever you're using it for. So that's everything I have today surrounding the consciousness ID and the new energy system that SpaceX seem to be developing, or have developed, it seems, with Elon Musk. As you know, I'm not a scientist or a quantum physicist or an engineer. So these are very basic explanations, as usual. And so if anybody has any further information that they want to send to me, then please email it to me at goldenheavenonearth@gmail.com. And again, I would like to thank you all for supporting me and helping me to make these videos, to get this very interesting and new information out to as many people as possible. Please come and also join me at my website, which is goldenheavenonearth.net. And you can also follow me at Telegram, LinkedIn, and X, amongst other platforms. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you there. Until then, bye for now.